Hello, Business Analysis Techniques class. This is your online instructor, Diana Block. And this is our lecture video for week 2. So for week 2, we're going to look at probability concepts, and there's a lot of information in chapter 2. So I want to make sure that you take the time to go through all the PowerPoints and do all of the reading in the chapter. And take notes because there's a lot of information there. And we're going to talk about just some of the probability and distribution concepts. And I figured the best way to do that and link it to the work you have to do, because there is so much, is to use this lecture time to focus on the specific concepts you're going to use for the homework. It could be very confusing to read the chapter and then try to figure out which of those many concepts you need to use for the 5 problems in your homework assignment. So we're going to drill down into those in this video. So if we look at the homework assignment, this is your assignment. I downloaded it from the Unit 2 content area. And this is the first problem. And so it is asking us about a class that is going to receive one of 5 possible grades. Students can get an A, B, C, D, or F. And it has some information in this paragraph about the distribution of grades over the last 2 years. And that's the information we have below in the table. 80 students have gotten A's, 75 have gotten B's, and so on over the last 2 years. This is the data they've collected. So based on that information, we want to find the probability of a student receiving a specific grade in the class based on the historical information, the probabilities given there, or the number of students that we have, and we want to calculate the probability. So in order to do this, all we're going to do is we're going to follow an example that's on page 25 of your textbook. So this is the probability calculation that's in an example on page 25. And all you'll need to do is to divide the number of students that received a particular grade by the total number of students. So if you take, in this example, 80 students divided by 300, that is the probability of a student getting an A. So you will do that with each grade. The number of students who got a B divided by the total number of students becomes your probability that future students will get a B. And so you'll complete that for each letter grade, and you'll take the number of students who received a particular grade divided by the total number of students in the sample, and that will tell you the probability of the students reaching each grade. And if you want to double check yourself, you could add a sum here. And all of these probabilities, when you get done, should end up being 100%. And that way you know you've calculated, or have a good idea you've calculated that correctly. So let's look at problem number 2. With problem number 2, we're going to use the probability information similar to the last problem, and we're going to use that to find out an expected return. So in this situation, this company stocks 5 different types of bread, and we have calculated already the probability for the sales of each different type. So we will have, what we want to find out here is how many loaves on average do we expect to sell. So we have a probability of 5% that we will sell no loaves. We have a probability of 15% that we'll only sell 1. And a 20% probability that we'll sell 2. So you get the idea. So on our transactions, we have various probabilities that we might sell a certain number of loaves. So what we're wanting to do is to take this the next step and determine, based on these probabilities of selling a certain number of loaves, what's our average sale? What is our expected sale? So this is going to require a couple of extra steps than the last problem. So I'm going to suggest right over here, start here, and what you're going to do is multiply the probability of that occurring times the number of loaves that have that probability. So we're going to multiply this times this and put the result here. Then you're going to take the probability that you're going to sell 1 loaf times 1 loaf, and you're going to put that answer here. So you're going to take the probability that you'll sell 2 loaves times the 2 loaves and put that answer here. So you see what we're doing. We're multiplying the number of loaves times the probability of selling that number of loaves and putting that answer right there. And so the answer to our question of what is our expected sale is going to be the sum of all of this information. So we're going to sum these, and that answer goes here. And this answer in the green, this is going to be our expected sale or our average sale based on the probabilities that we're given of selling certain amounts of loaves. And there's a formula, an example of this on pages 34 and 35 of your text. As you're reading through your chapter 2, when you get to pages 34 and 35, the problem you're walking through there is very similar to this problem 2 in your homework assignment. Let's look then at problem 3. In problem 3, this information tells you that we're going to look at some produce, and this produce is either defective or it's not defective. So there's 2 possible outcomes, either if it's not defective or it's defective, one of those 2. And so with it being 2 possible outcomes, that means we're going to use a binomial distribution. There's 2 possible outcomes in this scenario. And so the binomial distribution is in chapter 2. It's explained there. I want to make sure you look at the Excel instructions, because the text also gives you the manual instructions for formulas to calculate this, but we're going to use Excel. And on page 40 is where you're going to see the Excel instructions of how you can actually calculate this using Excel. And so you're going to use the binom.dist. That's the function in Excel you're going to look for. That's what the formula is that you're going to use in Excel, and just follow the instructions on page 40 for Excel. But what you're going to calculate using that function is the probability that no cases will be defective based on the information you're given. So you're going to use this binomial distribution function. You're going to enter that here, and you're going to follow those instructions on page 40 to know where to put in your 6%, your 10 cases, and put all the information into the function correctly, and it'll tell you, Excel will then calculate for you the binomial distribution of how many cases, the probability that no cases will be defective. Then you'll use that function again to determine the probability that exactly 2 cases will be defective. And then you'll use that again to determine the probability that up to 2 cases will be defective. So keep in mind, exactly 2 cases, up to 2 cases. So that's going to be a different, slightly different formula. So be careful of that, and when you're reading through the instructions on how to enter it, make sure you're following that correctly. And I'll give you a clue. It has to relate to the true and false in the last part of the function box. For one of those, you'll enter the false, and for one of those, you'll enter the true to get up to 2 cases versus exactly 2 cases being defective. But this is the function you're going to use. Check page 40 for specific instructions. Okay? Now let's look at problem number 4. And problem number 4, we've got some information about the standard deviation and the average sale. So when we've got a mean and we've got a standard deviation, we're going to have a bell curve distribution, which means this is our normal distribution. So you're going to use the Excel function normal distribution. That's the function you're going to use, a normal bell curve distribution. And the instructions for that are on page 46 of your textbook. At the Excel instructions, the normal distribution section spans a few pages, and they talk about the actual manual formula, but the specific Excel instructions are on page 46. And again, you will use that information, those instructions there, and use the details here in the paragraph to enter the mean, the standard deviation, and the test number, which in this case is 4,000. You'll enter that information into your function boxes per those instructions on page 46. And that way you will get the probability, Excel will calculate for you, the probability that sales will be less than 4,000, probability sales will be less than 5,500, and the probability that sales will be more than 5,500. So again, you see that these last two are somewhat similar, less than 5,500 or more than 5,500. So there's just going to be one item in the function that you're going to change to give you those different responses. So be careful of that. Let's look at this last problem, problem 5. And this is a queuing problem. This is about a company that takes phone calls, and they're trying to determine if calls take about 4 minutes to complete, what is the probability that a call will take a certain amount of time. So this is a queuing problem. And for queuing problems, we use exponential distribution. And exponential distribution is also in Chapter 2, and the explanation spans a few pages, but the Excel instructions are on page 50. So look on page 50 to see how to use that exponent distribution function in Excel. And you'll plug information into the boxes just like we've done with the other functions, and then Excel will just calculate for you the probability that a call will take less than 2 minutes or less than 5 minutes or more than 10 minutes. So all of those functions are explained in the textbook manually and the Excel instructions. If you have any questions about these, feel free to send me your spreadsheet so I can see what you're doing, or just Blackboard instant message me. Send me an email and I'll always get right back to you. But make sure that you read the chapter, review the PowerPoints, and then in addition to this video, look at those videos that are posted in the additional resources area, because those two actually walk you through a couple of problems and actually entering the information. That's why I didn't do it here. There's other videos that will show you that. And so this is your week 2 assignment and some of the concepts that we're learning in week 2. So I wish you a great week, and I look forward to hearing from you in the discussion area.